From the authentic soul of Bernie Siegel, MD, comes Mind Health Matters, a show that reflects Bernie's passion to reach people struggling with all of life's challenges, not just the physical ones, so that each person can live life fully with the understanding that, as Bernie reminds us, we only have today. Believing that we are all here to love one another, each in our own unique way, Bernie has crafted eternal truths and the timeless wisdom of the ages. Join Bernie as he shares his powerful journey through life while offering us special nuggets of his sacred wisdom.
Okay, hi everyone. Hi, Dr. Bernie Siegel, and we have a wonderful guest, Dr. Ken Pelletier. But before we introduce him, I just have an announcement that Deborah had asked us to make, and that is that we want to welcome each and every one of you to Mind Health Matters with Dr. Bernie Siegel on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network. Media partner for the Omega Institute. The show can be heard Wednesday through Friday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Listen online, on your mobile phone, in your car, probably in the shower, with your Beth, Bluetooth, and on Alexa's Echo. We have crossed the modern age threshold. We can listen to us everywhere. And if you'd like, and you should, if you don't mind me using that word should, I don't want to should on anyone, but a great website is Bernie's website, BernieSiegelMD.com. That's Bernie, B-E-R-N-I-E, Siegel, S-I-E-G-E-L, M-D.com. And mine is HappinessClub.com. We have a happy world, we have a peaceful world, and we have a healthy world, because we have the doctors that have been bringing you that world for years and years and years, and they are the pioneers of the world that we now live in. Thanks to Dr. Bernie Siegel and Dr. Ken Pelletier, we now have a different world than I think we ever would have before. Dr. Ken Pelletier has written a new book, Change Your Genes, Change Your Life. And we're going to be exploring that with him. But the book that I love and know Ken so well for is the book Mind as Healer, Mind as Slayer. What a classic that is. And, this whole work now is, sort of welcome to the whole new world of healthcare. And what Ken is doing is he's introducing the idea that biology is no longer destiny. Our DNA doesn't determine our health and disease prospects as geneticists once believed. According to the new science of epigenetics, the vast majority of our genes are fluid and dynamic, and their expression is shaped by what you think and what you do, and that's almost all we talk about on this program. Our genetic profile may signal an inherited vulnerability to a disease, but it is our choices and behaviors, and that is certainly covered each week on our show, determine whether these genes will be switched on or off. Each of us can influence our genes to create optimal health and longevity. So with that, Dr. Ken Pelletier, we welcome you, and you and Dr. Bernie Siegel have been the pioneers blazing the trail, bringing us into a new realm of health that we can become responsible for and enjoy all our lives, and a longer life, might I add.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I've been, as I mentioned to Bernie earlier, very much looking forward to this conversation with a longtime colleague and friend, so thank you for the invitation.
Well, let me give you some things to think about, because one of the things is I looked at the cover of the book. I thought maybe it should be Change Your Life, Change Your Genes. I don't know what your reaction to that is, but, you're helping us affect our genes. I think you may have mentioned the book that I sometimes talk about. A room doesn't get bright until you turn the switch on. And the same thing with the genes. You mentioned identical twins. Often I would stand speaking to a group. I'd say, I have identical twin sisters. One is very sweet and submissive and makes mommy and daddy happy, and the other one's a little devil who drives everybody crazy. Who's more likely to get breast cancer? And everybody votes for the good kid. So what is your thought about which, will change which? Should change your life?
Well, you're actually very perceptive. The Change Your Genes is actually a gotcha title. because, in fact, our genes do not change. They can be damaged by petrochemical exposure, so it makes herbicides, insecticides very problematic, hormone disruptors in the environment, especially for women, but now for men as well, or by radiation. So our genes, in fact, don't change. What changes is gene expression. So you're like I said, you're very perceptive that, in fact, our choices really determine or precede what will be expressed in a particular gene. So a gene is like a push in a direction, but everything we do after that push determines what we do. Less than 5% of what we experience as disease or as unique qualities or our life expectancy, longevity, has to do with genetic expression, and that normally appears between months 6 and 8 postpartum. So after 6 or 8 months old, we're pretty much steering the ship.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I was also thinking about, how we treat people, because I have written articles, sent them to medical journals, and they were returned. This was years ago. Interesting, but not appropriate. So I sent them to psychiatry journals, and it came back again saying it's appropriate, but it isn't interesting. That we know all this. And that's the part that just drives me nuts. We have to integrate, and I think it's part of what you're doing with your writing and your work, that we've got to integrate people. Jung talked about it 100 years ago, psyche, soma, but they're all in the same body. But we tend, and I'm interested in your reaction to this, you see, that when you read all the medical ads, I'm depressed, I have this. Well, I went to my doctor, he gave me a pill, and I feel better now. And I've written to pharmaceutical companies saying, put in a line that says, tell me what's happening in your life, before you put in, he gave me a pill. And they never answer me. But what do you see as the integration? Because I know you talked about what's coming in medicine in terms of genetics and so forth. But what do you see coming, and do you see medicine integrating the care? Not just a body or a brain, like taking care of parts of a car, but a whole unit.
Well, I'm guardedly optimistic, as they say, that I think the future really is a personalized medicine, but even more importantly, a personalized healthcare system. As you know, we don't have a healthcare system. We have a disease management industry. That's what we have right now. And I think the growing pains we're seeing as a profession and as the general public is that we're evolving into a true healthcare system. And a true healthcare system is going to be based on integrative or personalized medicine. And integrative medicine is simply that an evidence-based approach, and you have conventional medicine and you have what's called supposedly alternative medicine. But when you say, what's the evidence base for one or the other, you find that conventional medicine is unbelievably lacking in evidence-based medicine. The Cochrane collaboration, which is an international research group out of London, has conducted studies. It's a very disciplined approach, considered to be the highest form of evidence, and they have concluded somewhere around 30 to 33% of conventional medicine is in fact evidence-based medicine, and much of what we call alternative is in fact has a stronger evidence base. So if we step back and we say, looking at the medicine of the future, I think what it's going to be is evidence-based no matter what modality is used. It could be acupuncture, it could be herbal medicine, it could be pharmacology, it could be surgery, but the point is it's got to be evidence-based, and it has to involve the whole person, and it has to involve talking to the people and eliciting the kinds of things that you've championed for many years, which is their inner world, their inner beliefs, their sense of purpose, the will to live, the positive placebo effect, all of these intangibles that in fact play a major role in whether a person has an illness that disrupts their life, or they live with it, or they live beyond a supposedly terminal diagnosis.
Yeah. One of Jung's statements that always got me was the diagnosis helps the doctor, but it doesn't help the patient. For there, the key thing is the story. And only at that point can the doctor's, treatment begin to operate. But I can go back, see what you're saying, even with studies. I learned, and I mean this literally, to stop talking about studies and to tell stories. Because I would present, something from one of our medical journals, and I'd get yelled at from the audience. This was at, grand rounds, all these physicians. Yeah, that's a lousy journal. That was poorly controlled. You may or may believe this. One, nobody would support any of the work I wanted to do back in the 1970s. One of the students at Yale said, I'll do research on your patients in your support group to look at the survival statistics. It won't cost you anything. I said, fine, go ahead. He came up with some lovely statistics. What did a Yale professor tell him? It can't be true. Can you imagine the professor telling him it can't be true? He didn't say your numbers are wrong, your math isn't right, it can't be true. And he made him change the statistics so it wouldn't, basically support me and my work. But that was what I found so frustrating. So I've learned, tell stories, because nobody is confronted by a story. Oh, that was just an anecdote. That was just a case history. But it opens their minds, because then if they have a patient who acts differently, it reminds them of the story, and then they have something to talk to you about, and it changes them. I live by my experience, but too many people live by their beliefs. So it's hard as hell to change what they're willing to accept.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And what you're pointing out is when you bump up against belief systems, be it conventional or alternative medicine, whatever the practitioner believes is just that. It's a belief system. It's a temporary construction about what's real and what's not real. And when you bump up against that, you get criticized, or in your case, a lot of pushback. The early 70s, which is when you and I knew each other, was a time of tremendous upheaval. One of the great influences on me, other than yourself, was Norman Cousins. And Norman Cousins had a phrase he called the nocebo. And it was the basically negative prognosis. So placebo is a belief in something that may or may not be supported by the evidence. The nocebo is a negative dictation, if you will, that says you have a 50% likelihood of living 6 months. Well, what does that mean? It means 50% of the people who have the same diagnosis will outlive you. And so look at that. Look at the positive side. And Norman was really adamant about the power of words to influence how we communicate with patients and how it affects their belief systems, how it affects ours. And to me, fast forwarding now to the present time, the biggest change that's taken place is the greater flexibility. I can't say it's where either of us would hope that it would be, but there is an enormously a greater flexibility toward stories, toward science that moves us, when you really think about the implications, like the epigenetic research, moves us far beyond biological determinism. It takes us into the realm of beliefs and purpose and a sense of life. All the things that you've been talking about, we can now literally see it changing our biology.
In fact, I'm glad you brought up Norman Cousins, because his book Anatomy of an Illness was a tremendous help for me to understand the whole subject matter, which I resonated with, and I think he laid the groundwork for me to take to Bernie like I did. And in fact, I interviewed him in 1986 on my radio show when he wrote his first book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles. But I thought the work of Norman Cousins was incredible, and he also introduced laughter, which is an aspect of happiness. And his daughter, Sarah Shapiro, she's living out in in